Hello everyone, welcome back to another video discussion. Last week we have talked about how to write your research title as well as the background of the study, and if you're having a hard time to do that, you may rewatch the video and you may read your book as well as refer to another video discussion about it. This week, we will be talking about writing the statement of the problem and scope and delimitation. This is still under the chapter 1 and the introduction of your research. Okay, so how are you going to write the statement of the problem as well as the scope and delimitation? So we are done with the background of the study, and now, as I've mentioned, we are now in the statement of the problem and research questions, and then scope and delimitation. Okay, but before we're going to proceed discussing the statement of the problem, the research questions, as well as the scope and delimitation, let us first review this one. Okay, so the topic, as we have discussed before, it is the broad subject matter addressed by the study. For example, you have the senior high school mathematics, and the research problem is the general issue, concern, or controversy addressed in research that narrows the topic. So, for example, the problem is the low grades of senior high school students in general mathematics, and your purpose statement is the major intent or objective of the study used to address the problem. To improve the grades of senior high school students in general mathematics, and the research question, it narrows the purpose into specific questions that the researcher would like to be answered or addressed in the study. Can peer tutoring improve the grades of senior high school students in general mathematics? Why did I show this one again? Since when you write the statement of the problem and the specific research questions, these are your guide, okay? And without really understanding this one, you will be having a hard time in writing the statement of the problem. Alright. So, what is a statement of the problem? It is a particular issue which you will address in your study as well as the specific area of concern of the research. So, after selecting your topic, the next thing to do is identify your research problem. Alright, so may napili na kayong research topic and I've already assigned you to write your research title. This time, what is you should have identified your research problem already. And if you haven't yet, this time is the best time to identify it. This refers to the particular issue which you will address in your study as well as the specific area of concern of the research. The research problem states what is to be investigated, and it identifies the variables and discusses the relationship. Okay, so it concentrates on the issue or problem. It is usually written in a declarative form. This study will compare, these are the phrases that you will see in the statement of the problem. This study will compare, contrast, investigate, describe, determine, examine, test, etc. the issue being investigated. And as I've said, identifies the variables and discusses their relationship. So, dito sa statement of the problem, when we're going to go back to number 1, ayan, states what is to be investigated. So you're going to concentrate on the issue or problem that the research intends to investigate. Ano ba yung problema? Ano ba yung issue? So dapat sa research problem is mapakita mo yan. Next one, number 2, is concentrates on the issue or problem. So this one is related with the statement number 1 that you are going to concentrate kung ano yung issue concern na napili ninyo, and by concentrating, you're going to state it or isusulat nyo siya sa statement of the problem. It is usually written in a declarative form or in a sentence form, a statement form. And then number 4 is this. Ito yung mga usually used phrases when you are going to write your statement of the problem. The study will compare, the study will contrast, and so on, the issue being investigated. But remember that you are not limited only to that phrases. And then number 5 is you're going to identify the variables and discusses their relationships. Ito yung paulit-ulit, di ba, si variables. That's why I really did try to emphasize how important understanding your variable is. And you should know kung ano yung mga variable under study, because if you do not know the variable, how are you going to discuss the relationship? Alright, so in some academic journals, the statement of the problem and research questions are stated in different sections, while in some, they use the terms interchangeably. So, baka malito tayo dito kasi minsan, yung statement of the problem, it is written, magkahiwalay siyang sinusulat sa research question. Bale, iba pa yung statement of the problem and iba din yung research questions. But in some journals as well, yung term na statement of the problem and research questions, they are used interchangeably. So, para bang yung meaning nila is the same lang. But apparently, when the statement of the problem is dissected and variables are identified, so please remember that one na if daw yung statement of the problem mo is dissected tapos alam mo yung mga variables mo, the variables are identified, research questions are made. Okay, so please remember that one. If you identify the variables in your study, you need to write a research question. But usually talaga when you write your quantitative research, it has a research question and a hypothesis as well. In the research questions, you further specify the information that you would like to find out. How would you like it to be answered? And then along this line, the results of your study are the answer to your research questions. So, yung research question na ifo-formulate mo, gagawa ka ng research question kasi ito yung gusto mong masagot. Again, ang research question na isusulat mo sa statement of the problem, these are the questions that you want to be answered after your research. And because of that reason, the results of your study are the answer to your research questions. Do you see the connection of the two? Gumawa ka ng research question kasi ito yung sasagutin later on in the findings of your study, in which the findings of your study is the answer to your research question. Okay, so next is, let us go to the example we have here. This study will test the effectiveness of music on the spatial reasoning of children so that it can be considered as part of teaching strategies in this educational level. So, in this one, diba, sinabi ko kanina na yung mga this study will test, this study will compare, will contrast, and so on. Nakikita nyo dito, di ba? Those are phrases na usually ginagamit sa statement of the problem. So this one, this study will test the effectiveness of music on the spatial reasoning of children. So, the variables that are included in your study, first is music, and then second is spatial reasoning. So, ano ba yung effect? Meron bang effect yung music sa spatial reasoning ng mga bata? At bakit siya? Ito na yung justification. Why did you choose that study? Because you want to actually consider the music as an integral part of teaching strategies in the level of the children. Let us say, for example, elementary children. Kung makikita mo kasi na effective yung music sa spatial reasoning ng mga bata, so you're going to include that one in the teaching strategy. So, as a teacher, merong mga time na makikinig yung mga bata sa music kasi nga, it develops or it helps their spatial reasoning. Okay, so that is an example of a statement of the problem. Another example we have here, This study generally aims to determine if a senior high school student's use of social media possess significant relationship with their attention span in class. If you remembered, ito yung ginamit nating halimbawa in the previous discussion, in the previous video, yung sa social media and sa attention span ng mga senior high school students. So, gusto nilang ma-determine kung yung paggamit ba ng mga social media, meron ba siyang significant relationship sa attention span ng mga senior high school students. So, as you can see, one sentence lang, very brief and concise, that you state on why did you choose that study, what is your purpose, what is your goal. Yan, dapat nasasagot yan sa statement of the problem. Okay? And now, let us go to the research questions. So, research question, specify information that you would like to find out and how would you like to be answered. Na-mention ko na to kanina doon that the research questions, ito yung magiging sagot nito, makikita nyo sa findings of the study. So, the findings of the study is the answer to your research question. The results of your study are the answer to your research questions. Ito na yun. And then, specific research questions are anchored on the general questions. Okay, so kanina in the first slide, pinakita ko, na-review ko yung topic and then yung problem, yung purpose, as well as the research question. So, yung tinutukoy doon na research question is your general research question. And out from the general research question that you have, you're going to come up with specific research questions na masasagot later on in the findings of the study. And dito mo din siya i-base yung instrument mo kasi based on the questions na makikita nyo sa research question, doon nakabase yung mga questions din na makikita sa research instrument or sa survey questionnaire ninyo. It helped define the research problem of your study and it relates to research objectives. Bakit siya? Why does it relate to the research objective of your study? Since of course, you need to find, kasi what is your goal? What is your objective? Gusto mong malaman kung meron bang effect yung social media sa attention span ng class. So, your research question would also relate on that problem. Okay, so let us go to the example. Our general question here is ito. Does senior high school student's academic performance in math have any association with his or her stress tolerance? Ayan yung research question. So, that is the general. Tapos yung statement of the problem mo dito as well as you have the specific research questions. This study generally aims to determine if a senior high school student's academic performance in his or her stress tolerance. Specifically, this study shall seek answers to the following questions. So, ito na yung mga specific research questions. Number 1, what is the demographic profile of grade 11 students of De La Salle State University in terms of A, sex, B, senior high school strand, and C, final grade in general mathematics. So, ito yung kukunin mo yung demographic profile ng mga participants of the study. Kung ano yung sex nila at saka ano yung strand nila. Bakit hindi lang ito basta mo lang tinanong? Basta lang meron kang matanong sa demographic profile. Kasi yung study na ito, gusto niya ding ma-measure kung meron bang difference between the stress tolerance in performance in mathematics pala, as well as the stress tolerance of the female and male. Right? Kasi di ba minsan, sinasabi natin na mas magaling sa mathematics yung mga lalaki compared sa mga babae. So, kaya meron dito kasama yung sex kasi possible na merong difference sa result ng male tsaka female. And then, senior high school strand, bakit tinanong din? Kasi you also would want to know if there is a significant difference on the performance of STEM students, GAS students, and ABM students. And then, of course, your basis is the final grade in general mathematics. Kasi ito yung data na kailangan mo para malaman mo what is the academic performance of the participants in math. And of course, you also need to measure the stress tolerance of the student. So, how are you going to measure that one? Ito na yung number 2 question. What is the level of stress tolerance of grade 11 students of DLSAU? So, yung gagamitin mo ditong, as I've said, yung research question mo, ito yung guide sa research instrument mo or sa survey questionnaire. Since you have this research question, kasi nga, you would want to measure the stress tolerance of the participants of the study. So, kailangan mo maghanap ng standardized, verified, valid, and reliable na instrument para ma-measure mo yung stress tolerance ng grade 11 students. And then, number 3 question, is there a significant relationship between the DLSAU grade 11 students' final grade in level of stress tolerance? So, this question would answer your question, the general research question in which you would want to measure kung meron bang relationship yung grade, yung performance ng mga students sa level ng stress tolerance nila. Okay? Naintindihan ba yun? If you have any questions, again, please ask during our Google Meet. Next one is let us proceed in writing the scope and delimitation. What is this one naman? Right? Scope and delimitation describes the parameters to which the study is set. It sets the boundaries of your research in terms of certain aspects. So, yung as the name suggests, meron siyang scope, meron siyang nasasakupan hanggang saan lang. And delimitation, meron kang, you're going to state kung sino ba yung included and not included in your study, and why did you exclude some factors and why did you include some factors. This section of your study launches the limits of the process in which your study will be conducted. Here, you will discuss the variables that you will examine and the method that you are going to use. You will also mention the participants, the number of the participants, how many participants that you include in the study. Halimbawa, 100 participants, 80 participants. So, dapat nakikita natin yan sa scope and delimitation. The place where you will get your data, for example, Santa Cruz Academy of Lubao Incorporated, ganun, or as well as the instruments that you are going to use or the survey questionnaire if ever, and the time frame for completing your study, ilang hanggang anong time yung sakop niya, example, first semester or how many months, right? And then, we have here, papakita ko isa-isa. Mention the number of participants. So, ito na yun. Na-mention ko na to kanina, but let me reiterate it, na kailangan sa scope and delimitation, makikita natin kung ilan yung number of participants, ang methods na gagamitin mo. So, what are the methods that you will be using later on when you are going to analyze your study? And then, the instruments and the time frame. So, instruments, ito yung mga gagamitin mo para makakuha ka ng data. And number 4, place where you will get the data, or sino ba yun? Sa Santa Cruz ba? Sa Remedios? Ganon. And then, the scope and delimitation declare the feasibility of doing the investigation. Feasibility kung possible ba? Pwede ba natin siyang gawin? Makakaya ba natin gawin with respect to the situation na meron kayo ngayon, since again, very limited yung mga activities na nagagawa ninyo. So, possible na magagawa nyo yung study na napili ninyo. Okay. So, para mas clear siya, this is an example of a statement of the problem. This study was conducted at Philippine Normal University Mindanao during the school year 2016-2017. So, first sentence pa lang, it already answers where did you conduct the study, where did you get the data of your study, and what is the time frame that you did the study. Alright, next sentence. Respondents were all third-year English major students. So, dito na, it answers the question, how many participants? So, this one, hindi siya nakaspecify since it says that all third-year English major students were included in the study. But in your case, you may specify the specific number or digit that is included in your study. The scope of this study was limited to the perception, ayan, so perception of third-year English majors of PNU Mindanao on online learning modalities and studying literature courses in terms of first language, grades, the numbers of hours spent in a day online, and online learning modalities used. So itong mga delimitation na binigay dito, itong perception sa first language, makikita ito sa demographic profile sa research question. So, sa demographic profile, dapat tinanong ng mga researcher kung ano yung first language ng mga participants, ano yung grades nila doon sa specific literature course, and then ilan yung number of hours spent in a day online, and ano yung mga learning modalities na ginagamit nila. Let us say, for example, YouTube, Spark Notes, Google Scholar, and so on. And what are their perception on these learning modalities? So, yun lang yung sakop. The other factors, hindi na. So, kailangan specify nyo yan doon. Kasi di ba nga, some factors would have an effect on the validity of your research because it can act as the confounding or the extraneous variable in your study. And then sinama dito, this study did not include how the school or the faculty integrated online in the study of literature. So, one delimitation na nakita natin dito is that they mentioned na hindi dito kasama yung factor kung paano ginamit ni teacher yung mga online modalities or online learning sa pag-aaral ng mga English majors sa literature subjects nila. So, it is really limited to the learning of the students themselves. So, ganun siya. Alright, so that's the end of the presentation. I hope that's clear. As long as you answered the questions mentioned in the previous slides, itong mga ito. Wait. This one for the scope and delimitation. And then, for the statement of the problem and research questions. Ito, dapat in the research question na iintindihan ninyo kung ano yung problema ng study ninyo. Alam nyo kung ano yung gusto nyong malaman at the end of the day or at the end of your research. Kasi kung doon pa lang hindi mo na alam, hindi mo na maintindihan kung ano ba talagang goal, ano ba talagang objective ng study na to, you cannot create your specific research questions as well as your statement of the problem. Okay, so that's the end of this discussion. I hope that is clear.